Hey everyone, we're here today with Mr. Pornsak Pichetshote, a pretty amazing comic book writer of the US, and he's been here in Brazil through the publishing of Pipoca and Nanquim. To the few people that don't already know you, Mr. Pichetshote, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Pornsak Pichetshote. I write comics and TV on the comic side. I'm known for my graphic novels Infidel, The Good Asian, and I did Sandman Universe Dead Boy Detectives. Oh, and I just finished Man's Best with Boom Comics, which I don't think has hit Brazil yet.
So first of all, I do something that I didn't used to do, but I learned that it's pretty much important that I do it this at the beginning. I don't know how you're raised, so I don't know if this is going to be an issue with you. But usually, the people that I interview later on their interview, they realize that maybe they slipped in a curse word or something like that, and they feel all apologetic about it. So I just begin telling you, you can curse as much as you want,
Shoot.
and to make everybody feel comfortable, I would like to ask you, what's the most used curse word that you have?
I mean, it's probably fuck. It's probably fuck.
Well, you can say fuck as much as you want in this interview.
Okay, good to know.
No
Good to go.
censorship over here. Okay. First, so we can know a little bit more about you, I would like for you to tell us what was your gateway into comic books, and if someone were to ask you, what would you recommend a good gateway today?
Oh, geez. Wow. Okay. My gateway into comics was Amazing Spider-Man number 230. I think that was my first comic. I think it was second part of Nothing Stops the Juggernaut. I have vague memories of there might have been an issue of Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes written by Paul Levitz. That I might have gotten to sooner, but Amazing Spider-Man is the one I really remember. So I'll say that is the comic that got me into comics. Man, the comic to get people started, that's a tough one. I feel like that's really hard. I feel like it depends on the person. Well, is it a child? Is it an adult? What their interests are? I Anytime someone asks me what to recommend a book, I always freeze up. I always have to like talk to that person a little bit first to find out what their interests are. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's one just like go-to thing I can point to.
No, it's okay. I understand it. It is difficult because you want the person to enjoy it. So it's best
Yeah,
if you know like
yeah.
what kind of thing that person is into. So I totally understand. You as an author, you really pop up uh, to me at least because you kind of navigate seemingly through the genres. You don't stick to one stuff. You do like if you read Infidel, the horror stuff, my kind of urban horror stuff, but then you go to the Good Asian, which is a thriller noir kind of detective pulp stuff. And as your other stuff is not published here in Brazil, but I know it's different as well. It's you branch out to different stuff. So even though you do that, I kind of see a couple of stuff that I could pinpoint that, well, this is like Pichet showed stuff. Like I would point that out. But first of all, I would like to know, how do you choose the next genre you're gonna experiment on?
That is a really good question as well. I A lot of it is, have I done it before? A lot of it comes down to opportunities as well. What opportunities come my way. But if it's a creator-owned book, then it's usually like, what am I hankering to do? I start off as an editor, and part of being an editor is you are a little bit of a master of all trade, a jack of all trades, master of none. And so because of that, it gave me a wide range in a lot of different genres. And then I've always had the urge, because I love all these different genres, I always have the urge of trying that genre. So then I think it just really kind of comes down to, which idea do I feel like I have that just really clicks? That just, and sometimes that might mean going back to a genre. I've had this thing now where all the genres that I've worked on, I've kind of like done my complete set of going through all the genres, and now I'll occasionally read something like, oh, I'd love to try like a techno thriller, but I don't really know have a take on a techno thriller yet. So that goes in the back of my head. Like, I'd love to do a Western. I don't really have a take on a Western yet. But a lot of that, you know, but a lot of that, I think, is just like when I find the right take. And when I find the right take, I you know, in that way, it's funny. You know, like I feel like authors are pigeonholed more so than like say directors are, you know, especially like writers, directors specifically. Like I look at someone like Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino has a Western, he's got a martial arts movie, he's got a crime drama, he's got a crime epic, he's got, you know, war movie. And so he kind of jumps around. And I kind of like that in sort of a library of work. So to me, that is the thing that is sort of the most exciting. It is tricky as an author. Like, I think I sometimes like tell myself, you know, commercially, it might be a little bit easier if you stuck to one thing and really built your brand doing a particular thing. But I don't know, these were the ideas that just excite me the most. And so far, going with the ideas that excite me has proven well. And we'll see what happens from there.
Doing research for this interview, I heard you telling the story of how you went to work for Miss Karen. So I'm not going to ask you specifically about it because you've told that story like a bunch of times, but you always say one thing that kind of made me wonder, because you said that you didn't want the job. You wanted to be a freelance writer. And I don't know if you have answered this before, but I kept with that stuff in my mind, because why a freelance writer? What was so instigating about that job that you wanted to keep doing it?
I think it was more that it wasn't that I wanted to keep doing it. I just wanted to do it. I hadn't really tried to make a living as a, like I'd have temp jobs and all that kind of stuff, but writing was the thing I did on the side. And so I wanted to do that thing where you go without a net and see what opportunities, you know, present themselves. And for me, what presented itself was an editorial position over at Vertigo. But so it was more that. It was more, I just wanted to give that a shot and do that. And then when the Vertigo position came along, it was like, you know, a chance to work with some of my idols and influences. And I just really couldn't say no to it. But yeah.
I wouldn't have said no either. But in many ways, like for the perspective of a nerd, which I am, and a bunch of us that consume comics are nerds, you are kind of the nerd that hit success. You work with people that you're a huge fan of. Is there a specific occasion where you met someone that you used to idolize and that kind of got to you, like you kind of get nervous about it?
I think the story that jumps out the most to me, not that I kind of get nervous, but it was the one that like I had sort of the most flutters, it was right when I was starting at DC, where it was at right when I was starting at DC, it was like 2003, and Grant Morrison was jumping from New X-Men over to DC, where he would do All-Star Superman and Seven Soldiers of Victory and so much great stuff at the time. And he was in the process of wrapping up the film over at Vertigo while he was doing it. And he was in this process of this big contract negotiation, and everything looked like it was going to fall through. And meanwhile, the script to Fulfill number 13 kept getting later and later and later. And we would email and we would hear nothing. And we'd email and we would hear nothing. And then and at the time too, I don't know if this is still the case, but Kristen, Grant's wife, handled most of the emails, and Grant rarely emailed himself. You know, he let his wife, like a lot of comic creators, he let his wife handle the business affairs. And finally the contracts went through, everything went fine. And I think Karen was just like, where's the script to Fulfill 13? Like, it's ridiculous now we don't have it, even if you are going through these contract negotiations. And it got to the point where Grant had to reply himself. And he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've sent you the script 4 times now. You know, I sent it to you. I sent it to Pornsak. I sent it to Death. I don't understand. And what happened was, for whatever reason, we had gone through 13 issues. And like the 13th issue is like my first issue working at Vertigo. And that book had gone on for a year. And for 12 issues, including an issue that was titled, a chapter title named Pornomancer, it had never hit DC's like spam filter. But for whatever reason, issue 13, in the height of these negotiations, it hit the spam filter every single time. And so apparently every time we'd ask, hey, can we have that script? Grant would just instantly send the script. And so he was just like, I sent you the script like 4 times. Like, I don't understand. So we got this like very exasperated email from Grant. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I've sent this to you 4 times. You keep asking me for it. I don't know what to say to you. But the only thing I could remember was that it's like, oh my god, he spelled my name right. He like, because I was like huge Grant Morrison fan, and so but yeah, that was kind of the closest to like that sort of like starstruckness that I
Oh
had.
well, if Grant Morrison wrote my name right, even though
Yeah,
my name is not hard at all, but I would
yeah,
be very excited about it.
yeah.
Well, talking more about your stuff, I would argue that even though you do a lot of genres, there's like a common thread in your stuff, and it seems to me that you pretty much always, at least in the stuff that I've read, you talk about the other, the
Mm,
person that doesn't really fit in,
mm,
and in a society, in a space, and a cultural clash is the pressure of trying to fit in, of meeting people expectations of what they see in you, and the stereotypes that they like and that they don't like. So that I saw that both in Infidel and in The Good Asian. So uh, that kind of hits me because even though I live in Brazil and I consider myself a Brazilian, I am actually not born in Brazil. I was born
mm,
in El Salvador,
mhm.
which is it's a bit closer to
Yeah.
the US. And even though I came here as a teenager, and I've been here for like 20 years by now, it, from occasion, I like something reminds me that I'm not from here.
Mm, mhm.
And I know that you also had a multicultural background. You
Yeah.
moved around and you have your heritage and stuff like that. That kind of maybe made you feel the same way. And I don't know. I would like you to tell us about how that experience of you but yourself being the other shaped your writing or your creative process.
It's hard to say, I think, you know? I mean, first of all, like, it's always funny when people talk about the themes of your work because, like, I feel like I'm not aware of that sort of stuff. I think it's sort of more people pointing it out to me, like, oh yeah, you're right, I do that a lot. Um, and so, so a lot of it isn't conscious, but I think you're right that the theme of the outsider is something that definitely sort of speaks to me, and you can see it as an undercurrent of my work. I think if I think part of moving around a lot when I was a child is just trying to figure out like how does one fit in? What does fitting in mean? And all that. To the point of, I don't know, like I've always left myself feeling like, to what degree does anyone sort of fit in? You know, like, and that's a legitimate question. Is it just like, I feel like I don't know anyone who's completely fit in. You know, I think maybe later on in your life, you make your sort of circle, your sort of, you know, island of misfits toys where you kind of like call home. But I don't know if there are people who intrinsically fit in. Maybe I just don't live a life that attracts those kinds of people, or I'm attracted to those kinds of people. So I don't know how much of it is me and how much is just sort of a universal condition of, you know, everyone is different, and part of being in a community and being part of a society is figuring out how do you retain our differences without sacrificing our individuality, and still making this sort of bigger organism live and thrive.
And well, since we're talking about it, what would you say to maybe a teenager or a young person that, because like you said, I think that there's a point in our life when we're younger that kind of hits us very hard, where
Mhm.
it kind of messes with us a little bit, and we grow up and we kind of or either learn to deal with it or we get very happy about it, like we
Mhm.
enjoy our difference. But when you're young, it's not that easy, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
How would you talk to a person that is younger and that it feels that weight of not being what people expect them to be?
I mean, it's hard to say. Again, it's like recommending a book to somebody. It's hard to say without knowing the specific person involved. But I guess most often than not, it's a really interesting thing. I think where you go through a period of your life where the world being bigger than you think is a blessing. And part of growing up is realizing, I think part of finding your place, at least it was for me, was realizing the world was bigger than I thought. And so during my teenage years, it was, well, there's a bigger world. I grew up in Thailand. I went to, from 12 to 17, I lived in Thailand, and that's where I went to high school. So for me, there was always this promise of there's a bigger world out there. If I can just get out of Thailand, I can sort of find the place for myself. And that is something I think, I hope might be the best for a young person to know that the world is bigger than you think. There is an interesting thing that happens, and I think, as you get older, and I think we're seeing it more certainly lately, where the world being bigger than things ends up being a scary thing, and it feels like for a lot of people, the knee jerk is to defend yourself from that. But I don't know. I think part of hopefully my work and hopefully, how I live my life, what I try to do is that, like, and I also think it's part of just sort of staying young and remembering what it's like to be young and to have that sort of sense of discovery, is to not be intimidated by a big world, and to relish that and to embrace that, as opposed to, I think you're going to go through life and you're going to find, and I know this is not what you're asking, but you're going to go through life, and I feel like there's two types of people in the world. There's the people who feel like the world is bigger than them and they will lean forward, and there are the people who feel like the world is bigger than them and they will lean back. And I for a child growing up, I would say, if things feel hard now, the world is bigger than you think, and there will be opportunity for you. And then what I would hope I would say too is, as you get older, that doesn't stop being the case, no matter how many people try to tell you otherwise. And that's, I feel, hopefully that is helpful to a younger person.
Yeah, well, I feel like it would be. Well, your comics have something that I enjoy a lot, is that you can deal with heavy themes in your comics, but they are also very entertaining. Like, it's not a lecture. You're not getting, this is how it is. No, it's pretty entertaining, but you can handle some heavy stuff with a lot of respect, and that, I think that it's good for the message that you're trying to convey. But I often think, when I speak to comic book artists, I don't know if it chose you, or if you chose it, because you have the opportunity to work on TV and stuff. But why comics? What
Oh God.
what that medium has that you feel compelled to go to it to try to communicate with people?
I mean, I love comics. I mean, there's so many reasons why comics. For me, I think it is the place where I have the most immediate connection with my readers, with my audience. It is a place where it's just a couple of us, and we can do more or less whatever we want. And I've been lucky enough to be in positions where I could do the things that I've wanted to do. Have not, hit any of the perimeters that a publisher can't do. So I get a chance to sort of do whatever I want. Whereas, I think, in any of the other, in so many of the other medias, in sort of film and TV that I've had access to go to, there's just a lot more people involved, a lot more money involved. There's a lot more gatekeepers saying what you can and can't do. In comics, it's just you and an artist who can do whatever you want. You have a direct line to your audience and your readership. And I think because of that, you can kind of keep it intimate. Which is not to say that you can't keep film and television intimate. You just, it just takes a lot more energy and a lot more training and a lot more organization. Whereas comics, it can be a little bit more natural and it'll be a little bit more intuitive. And so it's also, as a result, it's a place where, where taking chances are rewarded. And that's what I love about comics. It's a place where you can continually experiment, and the readership will show up for it.
I did notice that the people that work in the comics industry, they tend to be more welcoming. Like, they generally seem excited to talk to me, like, most of the time. Do you notice any differences, since you work you have the experience of working in the medium of TV and comics? Is there any difference in the people that you deal with in both of them?
I mean, I think I joke with my friend. I think it was Brian, name dropping. I think it's Brian K. Vaughan who sort of told me that Harlan Ellison said about TV and film writing. It's like, they don't pay me to write; they pay me not to throw chairs. And I feel like that is very accurate. I love writing television. I love working with everybody, but because there's so many people involved, it can get frustrating. And I think as a result, when you're in those industries, because it can get frustrating, because there's money involved and people have ulterior motives, people can be a little on guard and defensive all the time. We don't have that problem in comics. There's not that much money floating around in comics. And because of that, the people who stick around to work in comics do it out of love. And it's hardly surprising that when you are surrounded by people who do things out of love, you bump into a lot of lovely people. And I think, that is another reason why I just sort of love comics.
Well, I talked. The first stuff of yours that I read was Infidel, and what I actually talked about it in my channel way before I even imagined that I'd be talking to you here. As I told you, it was one of my best reads in
Oh, thank you.
2023, and I really loved it. I need to like describe a bit further because the Infidel is pretty complex in some ways, in the sense that I think that you in the comic you guys exploit very well not only the storytelling but the art of Aaron Campbell and Villarrubia
Yeah.
are amazing. Usually I don't really read horror comics because they don't scare me at all, and I think it's the comic book genre. It's kind of unfair with horror because I think it's hard to scare people in that. You don't have the soundtrack to do that, to make the environment. You can easily read a couple of pages ahead and kind of spoil what's coming ahead of yours.
Right.
But first of all, the art was super creepy. Like there was pages that I didn't came back to it. I read the comic like 3 times by now, but there are pages that I don't wish to like stay in it. I just
Oh, that's great.
because it's really scary. and I would like you to know. I would like to know from you, like, how did you know by hand, or do you agree with the statement that maybe comics it's kind of tougher on the horror genre? And how did you deal with horror in comics in the sense that, well, uh, your story it's not about just creatures. It's a complex story that also has creatures. So how do you relate that stuff?
So I think, yes, I agree that horror is harder in comics. Primarily because we don't have sound, and sound, you can cheat really easily with sound on live action film and television to sort of get a scare. Like it give you an audio cue or a spike, and all that, a sting and all that kind of stuff to get you scared. We don't have that, so we have to use all the tools to kind of keep you in the world. And then once you're kind of in that world and trapped in that world, then we can sort of jolt you. So there's a lot of precision that's involved in sort of horror comics. In terms of how I sort of approached it, like I said, I love comics. And so any excuse to go back and reread comics is a good excuse for me. And it's probably one of the reasons why I work in so many different genres. I'm like, oh, I get to read sci-fi comics now. So I just read a bunch of my favorite horror comics. And through that, you start to see what comics do well and what comics don't. And like one of the things, as you're reading comics, and it's wonderful. It's been fascinating that like before Infidel came out, Junji Ito was still kind of an obscure thing, and now he's kind of become this global phenomenon, and but Junji Ito was like a big influence on me. And just when you're looking at his work specifically and you look at it, you're like, oh wow, the thing that actually comics does better than film and TV is actually body horror. And so that's like, okay, so that's a tool that we have that we can use. We can borrow some tools from prose writers as well to just sort of with certain prose can just kind of keep you on edge and all that. And I picked that up from Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Warren Ellis and sort of the ways they sort of handle it. So I would just sort of pick up like these tools that we've had and then just kind of go from there. I think what James Tynion is doing and with rhythm is really interesting, and how he just sort of modulates the rhythm of his storytelling so he can kind of hit you with a jolt. But I love comics, so I love to just read and just learn what different people are doing, and kind of like, I think that might be the other reason why I didn't follow up a horror book with another horror book, just because it's just like I kind of felt like I used all my tricks in one book, and now I need some time to kind of relearn and like have new opinions on like what the medium can do to get the effect.
And specifically about Infidel, because like I said, it's pretty entertaining, pretty scary, but there's a heavy message in it.
Yeah.
When you're creating it, when you're in the creative process of the story of Infidel, did you feel like did you create it pretty much all at the same time, or did you consciously wanted to put like some reflections of racism or stuff like that? It was it since the beginning. Did you want to talk about those stuff, or did you want to talk about? Did you want to create a horror comic and then put some other stuff in?
I think it's a good question. I think it kind of happened simultaneously. I don't know if one happened before the other. I know I wanted to. I think what it was might have been I wanted to talk about what the book was about. I wanted to do a horror thing, much in the sort of the same I was sort of saying. Like I have, there are genres I want to explore, and there are things I want to talk about, and I kind of realized like, oh, if you put this chocolate next to this peanut butter, you get kind of a different taste. And I think for me that's, and then from there I was like, okay, I can use this to talk about that. And then it was like, okay, once you start doing that, then it was like, oh, if you follow the notes of the genre, it gives you opportunities that, like the horror genre, like I don't have to end with a happy ending. That's the audience is willing to tolerate, and sometimes they welcome a non-happy ending. So that became an opportunity I could sort of lean into. And there were little things along the way, but I think it started around like, oh, I want to talk about this. I also want to do this. Let's kind of push them together. And they don't conflict each other. I sort of like, so often when I'm writing something, there are like 2 or 3 things I want to talk about at once. And so often the big part of the process, I look at it as almost like turning the things around to see where they lock together, to see where, and a little bit of it's instinctual, is me saying like, no, they should lock together. At first glance, it might not be obvious. And then you'd sort of turn it around. And turning around for me means, okay, there might be some things I want to do with the story. It's like, those things won't work, but these things will work. And a lot of that is just knowing the genre and then learning sort of the issues I want to talk about and seeing where the genre tropes actually align with the issues that I want to talk about so that I can talk about those things. And it's kind of happening sort of simultaneously. The best analogy I can think of is, I think, again, another name drop. Kieran Gillen had once said that when he writes, he thinks of it now more than ever. He thinks of it more like a 3D printer, where he goes through, he gets a skeleton, and then every layer he goes through gets fuller and fuller and fuller. And I've really started to adopt that analogy because I think it's very natural to what I do, where I just like, I have a little skeleton of what I want to do, and then I build it out. And then sometimes when I build it out, I realize like, oh, these 2 things can't exist at once. I have to sacrifice one and then figure out what that is.
Infidel was a big hit in Brazil. Like people really loved it. And there was a lot of comparison between Infidel and the movie Run from is Run no Get Out. I'm sorry, Get Out from Jordan Peele. And I don't know if because the horror genre historically it has a lot of critique on it. Like but I feel that maybe the mainstream horror like kind of got away from it for a little bit. But now it seems that it's returning that kind of horror movie that has some social critique on it. Yeah. And first of all, I would like to know, what do you think about the comparison that many Brazilians did about Infidel and Get Out? And second, why do you think that kind of a horror genre came back? Like, why people enjoy it so much?
I think, first of all, I'm very grateful for the comparisons between Get Out. I think Get Out is a fantastic movie, and Jordan Peele is a fantastic filmmaker. So I'm very honored and grateful for the comparisons to Get Out. In terms of why it's coming back, I think it ebbs and flows. I think certainly the times where, socially conscious horror was sort of the biggest, I feel like, sort of in the 70s, or at least that's the most sort of iconic. When you talk about that the most. And I think it was because there was so much turbulence at the time in the 70s and so much distrust for institutions. And we are currently, depending where you are in the world, we're currently going through that again. That might start up a little bit more now here in the States. And so typically that has been, it has been a way for us to, typically horror is a safe space for us to exercise some of our anxieties, and we'll see how long, what that turns into and all that kind of stuff. I'm constantly wondering, like, is this horror phase about to go away? But then at the same time, like, I was the person in 2011 that was just kind of like, I think the superhero phase is over. And I was like off by 10 years. So, so we'll just see how it goes.
And what genre do you most like? Like, do you want to return like the most?
Oh God, I want to return. I would like to do some more horror. It's funny. I for a while I wasn't able to write horror. I realized because I was like worried about the state of the world, and now the state of the world is just largely horrible. And so I feel for whatever reason I actually feel comfortable writing horror again. So I'll probably do more horror in these next couple of years. I would really love to do a slice of life book, but that it takes a lot of career planning to be able to like put yourself in a position where you can do that. Even if I have the idea, which I don't yet. I think I have the little embers of an idea, but I don't have a full idea yet.
Well, now at the end of the interview, I usually do like a dynamic where I ask you stuff and you can answer. You don't have to justify it, but if you want to, you can. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. Name an author, dead or alive, that you would like to have a coffee with and have a chat.
Today, I will say Grace Paley.
And a fictional character that you would like to do the same thing.
Oh God, a fictional character. I'm gonna say Sherlock Holmes. Even I don't think it'll be a pleasant experience.
What fictional universe would you like to live in?
Oh God. Oh my God. What fictional universe would I like to live in? I don't know. Something where everyone's happy. I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of clips for like the show Community and like that Greendale, that college Greendale. That feels like a really happy place.
It does. It does. Well, Lord of the Rings or Narnia?
You know what? I'm not a big fantasy person, so I might say neither. I might say Lord of the Rings just by a hair, but I am not passionate about either.
That's fair. Let's say neither. So you can say neither. It's fine.
Okay.
Star Trek or Doctor Who?
Ooh, Star Trek by a hair. I have not gotten into Doctor Who much. I know that is like taboo to say, but I have not like explored the full realms of Doctor Who. And even though I'm not a huge Trekkie, I at least know Star Trek.
Well, I think that if anything, you would enjoy Doctor Who. That it's also something that goes through genres a lot, like Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Each episode, it's a different stuff. Like they can do horror stuff very good.
Yeah.
They can do like hard sci-fi stuff very well. They can do like a bunch of stuff. So maybe you would enjoy that, but I don't know if you will enjoy the rest.
Which Doctor would you recommend me starting with?
That's tough. Well, I'm gonna be honest because because there's two stuff. First of all, I started with Capaldi, and I have like an emotional attachment to him. Like there's some criticism towards Capaldi, and I kind of understand them, but because he was my first Doctor, like I cherish that a lot. But I think that Tennant's run it's more consistent. That you would there's less like lows in Tennant's run. So it kind of depends. I like Capaldi a lot, but Tennant's more consistent.
Sounds good.
Star Wars or Dune?
Star Wars, only because I still have not seen or read Dune.
Really?
Yeah. So Dune came out like the first Dune came out like kind of the first Villeneuve Dune came out kind of around the pandemic, and so as a result, I was not able to go to a theater to see it. And I've realized I've hit this point of either life or society where unless I see a movie in a theater, I am not watching a 3-hour movie. Like I just can't watch a 3-hour movie at home. I need like a chaperone to do it. Otherwise, it'll take me a week, and I will not. I'll butcher the movie.
Well, I understand. So Star Wars, it is. At Alien or Predator?
Alien.
Blade Runner or Terminator?
Terminator.
You're the first one to say Terminator. Everyone says Blade Runner. Well, Pornsak, thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. I was very happy to have you here. You're one of my favorite comic book writers of the moment, and I really do hope that a lot of more people get to read your comics and a lot of more of your stuff comes to Brazil, because we do need that stuff a lot. Nothing. I love superhero genre. I read a bunch of it, But I do enjoy when comics get something fresh and new, and that's what you do, and I really enjoy that
Oh, thank you.
a lot. And so to finish this off, I would like you, if you can, to send a message to your Brazilian fans.
Sure. Yeah, like I was saying, I am thrilled to have Brazilian fans. That's great to know. And yeah, no, and thank you for reading. I hope more of my stuff gets to Brazil, and I hope to get to Brazil eventually.
Well, thank you so much once again for being here, and to you guys, see you next time. Bye.